The last thing I saw before I blacked out was its face at my bedroom window. Not animal, not human, something in between. And it was smiling. Nightbound Bloodline presents Nightbound Bloodline. 5 true unknown creature horror stories. The world is older and darker than our maps suggest. In the forgotten corners of deep forests, in the silent stretches of midnight highways, and in the shadows just beyond the safe glow of our porch lights, things linger. The witnesses you will hear from tonight are not storytellers. They are mechanics, nurses, veterans, ordinary people who stepped into the wrong place at precisely the wrong moment, and who carry the proof of it in their eyes, in their voices, and in their shattered sense of reality. These are their accounts. Story 1. The Visitor at Sarah Ann's Window. My name is, let's go with Clara. I'm 34 years old. I'm a registered nurse in a pediatric ICU in Cincinnati. My job is logic. It's monitors, medication doses, proven science. I don't have time for ghost stories, and I've never believed in monsters. Not the fairy tale kind, anyway. The real world has enough of those. But what happened to me 2 Novembers ago, it didn't come from a fairy tale. It came from the woods behind my grandmother's house. It was the week after Thanksgiving. My grandmother, Sarah Ann, had passed peacefully in her sleep at 89. The family asked me to go up to her old place in the Hocking Hills to sort through her things, get the house ready to sell. It was a place full of happy memories, cookie smells, knit blankets, the crackle of her big stone fireplace. I arrived just as dusk was settling. That deep, Ohio winter dusk where the sky goes a bruised purple and the cold gets right down into your bones. The house was a small, 2-bedroom cabin-style place, the back porch facing a wall of thick, leafless woods. It was silent, too silent. No wind, not even the chatter of squirrels. I spent the evening boxing up photo albums, my breath fogging in the chilly air because the furnace was ancient and struggling. Around 10 p.m., I turned into the spare bedroom at the back of the house. The window there looks straight out into those woods. I remember lying in that old 4-poster bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the emptiness of the house settle around me. That's when I heard the first sound, a heavy thump against the side of the house, like someone had thrown a sack of wet sand against the siding. I froze. My heart, a trained ICU nurse's heart, started hammering against my ribs. Raccoon, I thought. Or a branch. I listened. Nothing. Just that thick, oppressive silence. I must have drifted off, fitfully, because the next sound jolted me awake. It was a scraping. Deliberate. Like long, dry fingernails being dragged slowly down the outside wall, right beneath my window. I sat bolt upright. My blood wasn't just cold, it felt frozen solid. The moon was full that night, casting a stark, blue-white light through the bare trees. It threw the shadow of the window frame across my bed. And then, another shadow began to rise into that frame. A head, shoulders. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. It rose until it filled the entire window, and then it pressed itself against the glass. I saw it clearly. It was bipedal, standing on 2 legs. Its torso was lean, covered in a matted, dark fur that was patchy in places, like it was mangy. Its arms were too long, ending in hands, not paws, with fingers that seemed knuckly and wrong. But it was the face. God, the face. It had an elongated muzzle, but it was flat, almost pushed in. Its eyes were a dull, jaundiced yellow, wide-set, and they held a chilling, calculating intelligence. It wasn't the mindless gaze of an animal. It was looking at me, studying me. Its lips were pulled back from teeth that were stained and too numerous, caught in a grimace that wasn't quite a snarl. We stayed like that, locked in that impossible stare, for what felt like an eternity. Then it moved. It tilted its head, bird-like, first to one side, then the other. And then it smiled. The grimace widened, the lips stretching further than any natural mouth should, revealing more of those terrible teeth. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was a smile of recognition, of predatory amusement. It raised one of those long-fingered hands and placed the palm flat against the glass. A soft tap 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 followed. Not trying to break in, just getting my attention. I found a sound then, a pathetic whimper in my throat. At that, its eyes seemed to brighten. It leaned in closer, its breath fogging the glass in a greasy circle. And then it started to rock, gently, side to side, its face still pressed to the window, that horrible smile fixed, its eyes never leaving mine. The whole window pane began to creak in the frame. Something in me broke. I screamed, a raw, tearing sound, and scrambled out of the bed, falling onto the hardwood floor. I crawled on my hands and knees out of the room, down the hall, and into the living room. I didn't stand up until I was at the front door. I fumbled with the locks, my hands slick with sweat, expecting to feel those long fingers close on my shoulder any second. I finally burst out into the front yard, into my car, and I peeled out down that gravel driveway. I didn't stop shaking for 6 hours. I drove straight to a motel 40 miles away and sat in a bright, fluorescent-lit lobby until sunrise. I never went back. My uncle and a sheriff's deputy went the next day. They found deep, strange grooves scratched into the siding beneath that window. The deputy said it was probably a bear, said I was stressed, grieving. He meant to be kind, but I'm a nurse. I know the difference between shock and hallucination. I know what I saw. It was wearing the skin of a beast, but it was wearing it like a coat. And it looked in at me with a mind that knew exactly what it was doing. I don't sleep with windows anymore. Any windows. A creature of calculated malice, not mere instinct. A visitor in the night who seemed less interested in breaking in and more interested in breaking down. What waits in the woods, wearing a stolen shape and smiling in the moonlight? Story 2. The Thing in the Fresno Night. My name's Frank. I'm 62, retired long-haul trucker. Seen every mile of asphalt between here and the Atlantic, most of it at night. I've seen strange things on the road, tricks of the light, sleep deprivation mirages. I'm a skeptic by trade and by miles logged. But what I saw outside Fresno, California, in the summer of '09, there's no rational box to put that in. None. I was on a deadhead run, no load, just getting the rig back to a home terminal. It was about 2:30 in the morning, and I was cutting through these back agricultural roads to avoid the I-5-way stations. Flat land, endless fields, the air thick with the smell of fertilizer and ripe tomatoes. Dark as the inside of a coffin. My headlights were just cutting 2 lonely tunnels through the black. I had my window down, the radio playing static bleeding classic rock, just trying to stay awake. Up ahead, I saw a figure on the side of the road. Hitchhiker. Not unusual, even at that hour in the middle of nowhere. As I got closer, my high beams caught it, and my brain just stuttered. It was standing upright, but it was all wrong. It had to be 7 feet tall, easy. It wasn't a man in a coat. Its skin, or hide, was a mottled, hairless gray, like a wet elephant. It was lanky, with arms that hung down past its knees, ending in these long, spindly hands. But its legs, they were bent backwards, like a dog's hind legs. The head was oval-shaped, too small for the body, and it had no features I could see. No eyes, no nose. Just a dark, shadowed area where a face should be. It was just standing there, facing the field, one of those long hands resting on a fence post. It didn't turn. It didn't react to my lights at all. I let off the gas. Instinct. Not to stop, hell no, but to process. A prank? Some kind of avant-garde scarecrow? But it was still. Not the stillness of something inanimate, but the absolute, poised stillness of a predator. A chill, totally separate from the warm night air, went right up my spine. I've seen deer freeze in headlights. This wasn't that. This was indifference. I was a gnat buzzing by. As I rolled even with it, maybe 30 feet away, I heard it. Over the rumble of my diesel and the radio, a sound cut through. A low, rhythmic clicking, like 2 stones being tapped together, fast. It came from the thing. The clicking sped up, a staccato, insectal chatter. That's when the smell hit me, rolling in through my open window. It was a sweet, coppery stench, like rotting fruit and old blood, mixed with something sharp, almost chemical. It made my eyes water. I stomped on the accelerator. The rig groaned and picked up speed. In my side mirror, I watched it. For a few seconds, it was just a shrinking gray post in my red taillights. Then it moved. It didn't turn around. It simply unfolded. Those backward legs tensed, and it leaped over the 6-foot farm fence in one fluid, impossible motion. No run-up, just a spring. It cleared it like it was nothing and landed in the plowed field, sinking into a crouch. And then it turned its head. In my mirror, I saw that smooth, featureless oval now pointing directly at me, at the fleeing truck. The clicking sound stopped. A second of pure silence. Then it began to run, not on 2 legs. It dropped onto all 4s, using those long arms and its powerful haunches, and it moved. It didn't run like anything. It was a scuttling, galloping blur, kicking up clouds of dark soil. And it was fast, unnaturally fast. It was cutting across the field at an angle, on a path to intercept me at the next road junction a half-mile up. This wasn't fear anymore. This was a primal, gut-level terror I've never felt before or since. I had the hammer down, my old Peterbilt screaming, doing 80 on a road meant for 40. I was wrestling with the wheel, my eyes darting from the dark road ahead to the side mirror. It was keeping pace, gaining. In the moonlight, I could see its form, a low, gray streak against the darker earth, a silent engine of muscle and wrongness. I could see the glint of wetness on its back. My mind was screaming. It was going to reach the road before I passed the junction. I was going to have to drive right past it. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles cracked. The junction was coming up fast, a T-intersection with a stop sign. I had no intention of stopping. The thing reached the edge of the field and hit the gravel shoulder of the crossroad just as I was approaching. It didn't slow. It launched itself from the field, sailing across the road in front of me in a single, soaring bound. I caught a full, horrifying glimpse in my headlights as it crossed. The seamless gray skin, the rope of muscle, the complete absence of a face. It landed on the other side with a soft thud I felt through my tires, and immediately pivoted, coiling to spring again, this time directly at the driver's side of my cab. I did the only thing I could. I yanked the air horn. A blistering, deafening blast of sound shattered the night. The thing froze in its coiled stance. For a fraction of a second, it was perfectly still. Then it flinched. It reared back, its small head tilting. It was a reaction, not of pain, but of surprise, of annoyance. I blew the horn again, a long, wailing scream. The creature took one loping, sideways step back into the shadows of the opposite field. It didn't run. It just faded into the darkness, its form dissolving into the rows of crops. I never saw it again. I didn't slow down until I hit the city limits of Bakersfield 2 hours later. I sat in a well-lit truck stop, drinking coffee I couldn't taste, hands shaking so bad I couldn't hold the cup still. I reported nothing. What would I say? I've driven that route 100 times since, always in daylight. I look at that field. It's just a field. But I know, something lives there that doesn't belong in any book, any legend. Something that runs on backwards legs and listens for the sound of engines in the dark. A creature of impossible anatomy and chilling speed, hunting the lonely roads between the places we call home. Not a ghost, not a beast from a fable, but something entirely other. What paths do they walk when our headlights aren't there to catch them? Story 3. The Pale Swimmers of Lake Oro. I'm Maya. I was 22 at the time, a geology grad student. I was up at Lake Oro in the Canadian Shield for a summer research project, mapping glacial sediment layers. I'm a scientist. I deal in evidence, in rock-solid fact. I thought the deepest mystery those waters held was the var of clay at the bottom. I was wrong. Lake Oro is remote. It's a vast, cold, deep body of water, surrounded by ancient pine forests so thick they swallow sound. My team had left for a supply run to the nearest town, a 3-hour drive. I'd stayed behind to finish some core samples. It was one of those perfect, still northern evenings in late July. The sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples that reflected perfectly on the lake's glassy surface. The water was like a black mirror. I was on the small wooden dock, cleaning my equipment, enjoying the profound silence. That was the first thing that changed. The silence didn't deepen, it thickened. The loon stopped calling. The insects went quiet. The lake itself seemed to hold its breath. The encounter, Phase 1, unease of fog began to rise. Not from the shore, but from the very center of the lake. A thin, milky mist that spread across the water, moving against the faint breeze. It was beautiful, eerie. I took out my phone to take a picture. That's when I saw the first ripple. A single, perfect circle far out, where the fog was thickest. Then another, closer to the dock. Then a series of them, in a straight line, as if something was swimming just below the surface, heading toward me. But there was no head, no fin breaking the water. Just these silent, expanding rings. The air grew cold, sharp. It smelled suddenly of wet stone and something else. Ozone, like after a lightning strike, and a faint, briny odor, like a long-dried seabed. I backed up to the end of the dock, my boots thumping on the old wood. The ripples stopped about 50 feet out. The mist hung there, hovering over the spot. And then, a shape broke the surface. It wasn't a fish. It was a pale, elongated head, hairless and smooth. It rose slowly, followed by a neck too long and thin to be natural. It turned, and I saw a face. It had large, dark eyes that reflected the dying sunset with a flat, obsidian shine. No pupils, just black orbs. Its mouth was a lipless, horizontal slit. It stared at me, not with animal curiosity, but with a cold, patient observation. Then, a second head broke the surface beside it, slightly smaller. Then a third, further back. They were in a loose triangle, just floating, their bodies submerged. They made no sound. They didn't blink. They just watched. My scientific mind was screaming classifications. Some kind of unknown cetacean? A mutated sturgeon? But my primal brain knew better. This was wrong. All wrong. One of them, the largest, began to move. It didn't swim like a creature. It glided. Its head moved forward, creating no wake, as if it was being pulled on a wire. It came closer, until it was maybe 20 feet from the dock. The others followed, maintaining their formation. The cold intensified, crawling up my legs from the lake water beneath the planks. The ozone smell was overpowering now, mixed with a deeper, organic decay. The lead creature opened its mouth. Not a bite, a slow, deliberate parting of that slit. Inside was darkness, and then a sound emerged. Not from the water. It seemed to come from inside my own head. A low, resonant hum, vibrating in my molars, my bones. It was a sound of profound emptiness, of deep, abyssal pressure. It wasn't threatening. It was calling. And a part of me, a deep, buried part, wanted to step off the dock, to walk into that black, cold water and follow that hum down into the quiet. I stumbled backwards, tripping over my sample crate and landing hard on the dock. The sudden movement broke the spell. The humming stopped. The lead creature's head tilted, that black gaze fixed on me. Then, as one, they sank. Not with a dive, but a slow, silent descent, their pale forms dissolving into the dark water until the lake was smooth again. The mist dissipated as quickly as it had come. The loons started calling. The world returned. I lay there, shaking, soaked in cold sweat, my heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. I grabbed my gear, ran to my truck, and drove. I met my team on the road and told them I had food poisoning. I never went back to that dock. I finished my thesis using data from other lakes. I've told this story to only a few people. One, an elder from a local First Nation community, listened quietly, and then said simply, "The old waters have guardians. They are not for us." He didn't mean protectors. He meant occupants. I believe him. I don't swim in deep lakes anymore. Not ever. Because I know what waits in the stillness, watching from the deep, humming a song that makes you want to drown. Guardians of the abyss, or ancient residents of a world we only skim the surface of. The deep water holds more than forgotten geology. It holds a consciousness, cold, patient, and utterly alien. Story 4. The Sand Dweller of the Navajo Nation. I am Thomas. I am 48 years old, a former Marine and now a utility line inspector. I was working a contract out near the Arizona-Utah border, checking remote transmission towers. I have the utmost respect for the land and the Navajo families who live there. I don't trespass on sacred ground, and I heed warnings. But sometimes, the ground itself has a warning it needs to give. It was late afternoon, the desert heat beginning to soften into that golden, long-shadowed time. My truck was parked on a dirt service road, and I had a 2-mile hike to a tower situated in a wide, barren valley between red sandstone mesas. The only sounds were the crunch of my boots on gravel and the wind sighing through the canyon. It was beautiful, desolate, and I felt the familiar, humbling smallness you get in places like that. As I reached the base of the tower, I noticed the sand at my feet. It was moving, not from the wind. The wind was calm. This was a subtle, swirling motion, like water draining in a slow vortex. I stepped back, thinking it was an antlion pit or something. But it wasn't just one. All around the tower's foundation, in a rough circle about 20 feet across, the sand was gently shifting, settling, as if something was breathing just beneath the surface. A cold prickle went up my neck, despite the heat. I'd heard stories from the local crews, whispers of Yinalblishii or skinwalkers, but also older things that belonged to the desert before people, things that lived in the sand. I dismissed it as superstition, but the evidence was at my feet. The sand was alive. I decided to do my inspection fast and leave. As I climbed the service ladder on the tower, I kept looking down. The swirling had stopped. The sand was perfectly smooth, unnaturally so, like a made bed. I finished my work, my skin crawling the whole time. When I climbed down, I saw them, footprints. My own, leading to the tower. And another set, larger, bare humanoid feet with oddly long toes, that came from the direction of the mesa, walked a circle around the tower right over the smooth sand, and then stopped in the middle of the circle. They didn't lead away. They just ended, as if whoever made them had been lifted straight up or had sunk straight down. I was staring at those terminating footprints, my mind racing, when I heard a new sound. A soft, dry slither, like rope being pulled through sand. It came from directly beneath the tower, from the shadowed space between the metal braces. I took a slow step back, and then the sand in that shadow bulged. It rose in a mound, then settled, revealing a shape. An arm. A long, lean arm the color of bleached sandstone, textured not like skin, but like smooth, packed sediment. Its fingers were too long, each with an extra joint. It lay there, half buried, as if resting. Then, the sand bulged again, and a head emerged. It had no eyes, just smooth, featureless dunes where eyes should be. Its mouth was a wide, shallow groove. It didn't turn toward me. It didn't need to. I felt its attention like a pressure. This wasn't a predator stalking. This was a resident, disturbed, annoyed. The groove of its mouth opened. No sound came out, but the air before it shimmered like heat haze. The sand around me began to vibrate, jumping and skittering in tiny hops. A low-frequency thrum traveled up through the soles of my boots, into my bones, a vibration that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The thing began to rise, not with limbs, but as if the sand itself was pouring upward to form its torso, a second arm. It was constructing itself out of the desert floor. A warning flashed in my mind, a phrase I'd heard but not understood. Didn't let it finish the shape. I didn't wait. I turned and I ran. I didn't look back. I ran with the same focused terror I'd felt in combat. But this was an enemy no weapon could touch. Behind me, I heard not a roar, but a vast, dry hiss, like a mountainside of sand sliding. The air filled with a stinging, choking dust that hadn't been carried by any wind. I made it to my truck, coughing, my eyes burning. I sped down that dirt road, the rearview mirror showing a localized dust devil spinning violently where the tower stood, a tan column twisting into the twilight sky. I reported a sandstorm interference to my boss. I didn't go back. A Navajo crew was sent a week later. They found the tower intact, but the ground around it was different. The sand was now a perfect, hard-packed clay, smooth as pottery, in that same 20-foot circle. The foreman, an older man, took one look, muttered something in Dine, and refused to let his crew work there until a medicine person came to bless the site. I transferred my contract soon after. I know what I saw. The desert isn't empty. It's full, and some of its oldest children sleep just beneath the surface, dreaming in sand. And you do not want to be there when they wake. An entity of the earth itself, a guardian spirit of the deepest deserts, or something that simply wears the land as its skin. Some borders are not marked on any map, but are felt in the vibration of the ground beneath your feet. Story 5. The Listeners in the Colorado Pines. My name is Eli. I'm 28, a freelance writer. I went to a remote cabin in the Colorado Rockies last October for a writing retreat. Solitude, crisp air, no internet. I'm a rational guy. I meditate. I don't believe in the supernatural. I believe in mental health and overactive imaginations. What I experienced, it's made me question the very nature of solitude. Because I was never alone up there. The cabin was perfect. A small, sturdy thing perched on the side of a valley, surrounded by a dense stand of tall, straight lodgepole pines. The first 2 days were idyllic. I wrote, I hiked, I enjoyed the silence. On the third night, the silence changed. It was after midnight. I was reading by the fireplace when the wind picked up. It wasn't a howl. It was a whisper. A whispering that seemed to form words just on the edge of hearing. I dismissed it as pine needles hissing against each other. I went to bed. That's when the tapping started. A light, polite tap 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 on the living room window. Not random. A rhythm. I got up, heart in my throat, and peered out. Nothing. Just the black void between the trees. I went back to bed. The tapping started again, this time on the bedroom window. I didn't move. I lay there, frozen, listening. The tapping stopped. And then, from the woods, maybe 50 yards out, I heard a voice. It was faint, muffled by distance and glass, but clear. It was my voice. It said, Eli? Is anyone out there? It was the exact tone, the exact inflection I'd used earlier that day when I'd called out, thinking I'd seen a hiker. A perfect mimic. The blood drained from my face. This was followed by another sound, a low, chattering giggle, like multiple children trying to stifle laughter. It came from a different direction. Then silence, heavier than before. The next day, I was a wreck. I tried to convince myself it was a prank, maybe a parrot, ridiculous, or my mind playing tricks. That evening, as dusk fell, I saw them. I was forcing myself to sit on the porch. Movement caught my eye. Between the trees, standing perfectly still in the deep shadows, were figures. They were tall and painfully thin, with limbs that seemed too long for their narrow bodies. They were a dark gray, almost the same color and texture as the pine bark. They weren't hiding. They were posed. One was leaning against a tree, one arm raised as if resting on a branch above its head. Another was crouched low, head tilted. A third stood perfectly straight, half behind a trunk. None of them moved. They were like statues placed in the woods. But they hadn't been there a moment before. And their heads, they were all angled toward the cabin, toward me. I couldn't see faces, just smooth, dark ovals. I retreated inside, locking the door, drawing every curtain. The night that followed was a slow descent into madness. The whispers returned, now from all sides of the cabin. They didn't speak words, just mimicked sounds. The crackle of my fireplace, the creak of the cabin's floorboards, the sound of my own ragged breathing played back to me from the darkness. Then, the tapping resumed. Not on the windows, on the roof. A light, scurrying tap 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 that moved from one end to the other. Then a heavier thump, as if something had dropped from a tree onto the shingles. I heard them moving now, circling the cabin, their footsteps a dry rustle on the pine needles. They began to speak in a chorus of stolen voices. My mother's voice saying, "Let us in, honey, it's cold." A friend's voice, laughing. My own voice, pleading, "Please help me." They were learning. They were building a vocabulary of me. I spent the night huddled in the center of the living room, a kitchen knife in my hand, weeping from sheer, soul-crushing terror. It wasn't the fear of being eaten. It was the fear of being understood, of having your own life, your own voice, used as a weapon against you by things that watched from the trees and learned. At first light, the sounds ceased. I waited an hour, then burst out of the cabin, threw my things in my car, and fled. I didn't look back. In my rearview mirror, as I rounded the bend, I saw them. 3 of the tall, gray figures, now standing at the tree line where the driveway met the road. They were simply standing, watching me leave. One of them raised a long, spindly arm, not in threat, but in a slow, almost graceful wave. I've been in therapy since. I can't write fiction anymore. Reality is too strange. I know they weren't demons or ghosts. They were something else. Something that lives in the deep woods and feeds not on flesh, but on sound, on imitation, on the violation of solitude. They are the listeners. And if you go too quiet for too long, they start to whisper back everything they've heard. 5 stories. 5 ordinary people, their lives forever bifurcated into a before and an after by a single, shattering moment. A nurse, a trucker, a scientist, a veteran, a writer. Their worlds, once rational and predictable, were cracked open to reveal the unsettling truths that dwell in the margins. These accounts share a common thread, a profound intelligence that is utterly alien. Not the mindless hunger of a beast, but a conscious, observing, and often mocking awareness. These entities don't just haunt places, they inhabit them, as intrinsic to their environment as the trees, the water, the sand, and the darkness itself. They remind us that the oldest, deepest terrors are not those that chase us, but those that simply watch and learn. Have you ever walked a path that felt older than it should? Heard a voice in the woods that echoed your own? We want to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. If you found yourself holding your breath tonight, please like this video and subscribe to Nightbound Bloodline. Click the bell so you never miss when we venture into the shadows again. This has been Nightbound Bloodline. Thank you for listening. Until next time, sleep with one eye open. The end.